Welcome back to part 3, End of Days. I don't know about you all, but off the top of my head, I can think of a host of media that I have seen in my lifetime that portrays a dystopian world where the future is, to say the least, bleak. Going back to the question I asked before the break, think about some of the media artifacts that you have watched, like The Hunger Games, Idiocracy, Ender's Game, The Terminator, and V for Vendetta, just to name a few, and reflect on the way that the protagonist's authenticity is challenged by the powers that be. What types of technology is used to try and stop the masses from achieving authenticity and realizing their own most? Now, refer back to chapter 1 in Neil Postman's Amusing Ourselves to Death. The medium is the metaphor. In this chapter, Postman refers to, as he often does, Marshall McLuhan, who we will talk a little bit more about later, and his idea of aphorism. A quick definition: aphorism is the idea that the medium in which a message is presented is more important than the message itself. Postman sums it up on page 8 as, the clearest way to see through a culture is to attend to its tools of conversation. How do these tools of conversation not only try to stop the protagonist in the films we just discussed from reaching their authenticity, but also influence the way that you have been influenced by the medium more than the content of the message? How is that related to the way that technology is presented to us as a society? Pause here and write your response on the discussion board now. According to Stuart Hall, there are systems of representation involved in the production of meaning through language, mental representations, and language. You read about these systems in your big gray book for tonight. I want you to think about the way that not only Stuart Hall, but the whole segment on representation and gender in the book examines race, and apply it to a few clips that I've added from the film Ready Player One. Now, in the first clip, we are introduced to the Oasis for the first time, where we get to go and meet the avatar used by the main character and his friends. After the clip, please watch the second short clip where we get to see Wade and the rest of his crew meet outside of the Oasis for the first time. Afterward, discuss in the discussion board how the use of avatars in technology affects or influences representation in the media as we have traditionally learned about it in this class and beyond. And don't forget to ask your own questions. So you all should have watched the video, The Philosophy of Fallout. If you did not, stop the lecture now and watch the video before moving forward. If you did, let's keep going. In the Big Gray book, Gaming and Children's Culture examines the way that children are a large swath of the consumers that are marketed to and for video game culture. Now, this is in large part because these young people will be the future consumers of technology yet to be invented, mass-produced, and marketed. How does the way that Fallout presents the height of consumer excess in the 1950s juxtapose against a post-apocalyptic wasteland used to reinforce or diverge from the targeting of children in video game culture that is discussed in the book? Pause the lecture here and share your perspective on the discussion board. And don't forget to consider the role of cultural Marxism in this sphere. Part 4. Mad About McLuhan. As we should all know from our reading in B&T for tonight, our friend Marshall McLuhan was a Canadian critic known for shaking things up in the study of media by insisting on understanding media as technology rather than representation. His primary concern, as you have read, is with the ways in which the specific technological nature of different media affects the reconstruction of the relationship between human beings and the environment, aka media ecology. As a self-proclaimed explorer, McLuhan examined media ecology through the lens of 4 questions. The first, what does it enhance or amplify in the culture? The second, what does it obsolesce or push out of prominence? The third, what does it retrieve from the past, from the realm of the previously obsolesced? And finally, what does the medium revere or flip into when it reaches the limits of its potential? Please pause now and try to answer these questions by looking at the two artifacts that we have discussed for tonight, Fallout and Ready Player One. While both media have a large basis on video games and video game culture, with one of them actually being a video game, let's look at each, separate or together, your choice, through a media ecology lens. Let's wrap up the night with one final thought experiment in Chapter 11 of Neil Postman's Amusing Ourselves to Death, the Huxleyan Warning. Neil Postman warns that there are two ways in which the spirit of a culture becomes shriveled. First, the culture becomes a prison. Second, culture becomes burlesque. According to the artifacts that we have looked at, the things you have read, and now the lecture you have listened to, which of the two do you think Neil Postman was right about? Stop the recording now and write your response on the discussion board. Thank you all for listening to both parts of my lecture tonight. I really hope that you've enjoyed this experiment on my part and that you have learned something about cultural Marxism and the intellectuals who have shaped it into the practices we use today. I also hope that you can take away some things from our friend Heidegger about being and authenticity, and that a closer look at the types of dystopian media that is in our popular lexicon has led to a deeper understanding of the effects of technology upon us all, as supported by our favorite medium explorer, McLuhan and Postman. Thank you again. Have a great night.